Welcome, everyone. Today we have Juli, the owner of Distant Rabbit Games. Juli, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Kenny.
Yeah, of course. So super excited to learn more about you and what you're doing with your games and all of that. Recently you launched a game on Kickstarter that did over $180,000, that funded over $180,000. So that's pretty impressive. I'd love to learn more about the game, which is Mantis Falls. How it plays. People obviously love it, but I love to learn why people love it and what the game's all about.
Yeah, so basically the game is a 2 to 3 player, sometimes cooperative game, which is different than cooperative and different than competitive. The basic idea is that you don't get to know while you're playing necessarily whether you're playing a cooperative game or not. And so it keeps people on their toes. There's no way to sort of like micromanage the group because people don't trust each other. And but you also don't get into that position where you're sort of playing solitaire and just planning your moves out in your head. You have to kind of coordinate because you don't know. Maybe you are playing a collaborative game. So the game is set. It's Mantis Falls. It's set in this town called Mantis Falls in the 1940s, and it's a hidden traitor game. So basically, you've seen something, the mob has done something, and you were witness to it. You realize that you're a witness. They're coming for you. You're trying to get out of town safely. You've got some powerful friends that are hooking you up with another person in a similar predicament to try and get you guys out of town together safely. You just have to make it to the end of town before the end of the day, before the end of the night, really. And you hook up with this other person, you're told that they're a witness, you start your walk together and you realize you're not entirely sure. Maybe this is a witness and maybe you have to protect each other. Or maybe this is somebody that replaced your witness. Maybe this is an assassin and this person is here to kill you and you don't know which is true. If you're an assassin, then you know which game you're playing because you're definitely playing a competitive game. And the assassin's goal is just to kill a witness. So it's a 2 or 3 player game. And the assassin just has to kill one witness in order to win. The witnesses has to get to the end of the game. Everyone has to get there together. If it's 2 witnesses, they have to, 2 or 3 witnesses, they have to get to the very end together, alive. They have to save each other from the brink of death and all that kind of stuff, be self-sacrificing. If there's an assassin, then you have to kill the assassin before the assassin can kill you. And so you're with another person, you're constantly wondering, do I save you or do I kill you? Do I save you or do I kill you? And so this constant tension in the game of you trying to make that decision. And so what it amounts to is basically you're constantly trying to keep the other player on the edge of the line where you could kill them if you wanted to, and you could also save them if you needed to. And you basically want to keep them there until you feel sure that you know which one they are. And then you're going to fall to one end or the other. Try and kill them or try and save them. That's basically the plot of it. I think it falls technically into the category of Ameritrash. It's a very plot-driven game. It's not very like Euro game. It's not a lot of engine building or anything like that. It's more, it's hand management. It's a lot of risk management and hand building and everything. And the goal is to hedge your bets. And then the sort of bigger goal is how do you communicate person by person? Like if you and I were playing, how would I successfully convince you that I was a witness? And it might be the same strategy, whether I'm an assassin or a witness. My goal is to convince you that I'm a witness. And so how do I get you to really believe that? And then if I betray you this time, how do I get you to believe I'm actually a witness next time when I am actually a witness, when you're going to be even more distrustful of me? So it's got this like really deep, highly interactive, very immersive thing for low player counts. And so there's just not games that are hidden traitor have basically been the lowest player count I've ever seen for this level of strategy is Battlestar Galactica, which has 3. I've never seen it for 2 anywhere. And we did a lot of market research ahead of time. And so my partner Adrian and I developed this game over the course of 5 years. He did all of the mechanics and I did all of the art. And then we launched the whole thing, just the 2 of us. We did all of our own marketing and advertising and website design and basically everything from beginning to end. And so it's been a lot of time invested in trying to make sure that people really understood what we were going for here.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, it's worked out really well. And I'm just hearing the game now and it sounds like a game that I would enjoy a lot. I mean, for part of my game group, we love games like Shadowhunters or Secret Hitler, or games that are kind of, in a way, kind of similar because it's you're playing the game, but you're also playing the social game on top of that, in the sense that you have to convince people, beyond just the confines of the game. You convince your friends that, oh, I'm an assassin, I'm a hunter, I'm a shadow, whatever, when you're really not. And it's fun because, like you mentioned, it carries on to the future games too. Because, oh, I betrayed my friend on this game, so are they going to trust me, or I have to,
If they realize that
be
you're a
aware
really
of that.
liar or really bad liar, then that carries over from game to game, and then maybe people get better at lying, and it kind of changes the dynamic too. Yeah, no, it's that's one of the things he and I always loved about Hidden Traitor games. We started out with the Resistance and got really into that, and then sort of like found our way through. We have Secret Hitler, love Secret Hitler. One of the things that we wanted was something that was a little bit more strategic. So in Resistance, Secret Hitler, it's a vote, right? Like yes or no. And then like in Secret Hitler, I like the mechanic where you have the three things. So there's this plausible deniability, right? Like, oh, I got 3 fascist cards. What could I do? Sometimes does actually happen. But we wanted it to be that like, if I'm going to betray you, if I'm going to actually like kill you, instead of it being a vote or like in like Dark Moon, which is the adaptation of Battlestar Galactica Light became Dark Moon. I think they lost their license to BSG. I'm not sure, but it's like you're trying to sabotage the ship. Or like Among Us, the video game, like the app. You're trying to sabotage the ship, and in that one you're trying to kill other players, but you just kind of click a kill button. We wanted it to be that you have to not just be cunning and lie well and everything, but you have to lie well under a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of strategy. So like, if I'm going to kill you, I have bullets, I have knives, I have grenades, I have a special card like Betrayal, which allows me to do wounds to you, but then it also has like an enormous impact on the game. So I'd only do it if I knew we were adversaries. There's all of these different things that I can collect throughout the game to craft my perfect moment. But if you've collected better than I have, if you've got defenses against that and you planned for that, then you're waiting for that moment. And when it comes, you're able to defend against it better than I can attack you. So we wanted it to be very, very strategic and very much like what you would actually want to do in real life. Like if I were actually trying to hurt somebody, I'd probably use like a gun and a knife, and I wouldn't be voting for anything,
Yeah, it sounds like you put a lot of effort in this game. You mentioned 5 years of development of, with your partner making this game. I guess with that, I'm curious what really sparked the desire to create your own game, around 5 years ago.
That was all Adrian, actually. So ever since I've known him, he's done all of these he does these creative projects. So he's got 2 kids. We raised them together. So I have 2 stepkids. When we were working in the lab together, so we started here at UGA in the food chemistry lab together, both getting our PhDs. I remember he would show me like cards that he designed. He wanted his daughter Wendy to get really into sort of like the Pokemon Magic style trading card kind of games. He was making his own game there was like a whole like elf class that he was creating and designing all the cards and everything. So he's always been really adept with, Photoshop, Illustrator, all the Adobe Creative Suites. He's always been very, very creative in general. He writes music and everything. He had just left that year. He just left UGA for a job in New Jersey as a professor, and was just having, pre-tenured professors always have a really hard time, lots and lots of work, the publisher perish kind of thing. And then in addition, he had to create all this new coursework for his program. It was just a very stressful year. He was really exhausted all the time. He finished up that year, and he had a lot of grading to finish up for final exams, and was just purely exhausted. And for Adrian, this thing tends to happen where when like the pressures are really, really heavy, he suddenly gets like a creative urge, like he'll create an amazing song, or, like at the same time we were long distance and we were trying to figure out how to do that while we were playing board games online. Had this idea for this game that was going to be like more interactive than most of the things that we played together. So we played like Hanabi, I think ended up being a favorite of ours because even though you're not talking, there is a style of communication. It feels really gratifying. But we would play like Ticket to Ride, like tons of these like app ones, Terraforming Mars and stuff like that. And it'd be like, okay, like I'm playing my game, you're playing your game, and we like tallied the scores at the end. We always wanted something more interactive, and Hidden Traitor games always had that for us, where you always end up having huge discussions, even like screaming matches sometimes over Hidden Traitor games. Yeah, he had this idea for the way that you could ensure that it was going to be interactive was for a 2-player game is by not knowing if it's cooperative or competitive. The impetus, he called me up with the idea. I didn't really know what to think of it because we didn't really make board games. And then when I played it for the first time, I loved it. Originally planned to go to art school long, long time ago. So I started doing all the art for the cards. And then we just, I mean, we really took our time. It felt like at the time, like we were really hustling, nothing like we are now, but we really took our time getting everything perfect. And I think that was one of the beautiful things about working with a partner like we are. He's not like paying an artist. I'm not trying to like get some idea from the designer of what he's looking for. We're like sitting 2 feet away from each other and we go like, what about this? Oh yeah, that's good. Like, what about if we tried that? And we're both willing to put in way more time than we would ever get in payment in return. So if the art's not right, then I just make new art, so the amount of hours that we put in is probably ludicrous, probably more than most people, because most people have to pay someone for their time. And we were just like 5 years of work in. It was all born out of like a desire for the two of us to have something that felt like the game that we were looking for. Totally was. It was exactly right. And it was just crazy how quickly it came to him.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned a lot of work went into it, and maybe 5 years. I think a lot of people that make games, they realize it's more of a passion, not so much a moneymaker. But with that being said, you still did raise a lot of money for this game, $180,000. So that's super awesome. A lot of people, they try to fund their game, but it doesn't even meet their minimum amount. So that's awesome.
It kills me all the time. I'm like looking at Kickstarter, like pledging to like random people's, pages, because I'm just like, please have, I feel like we got extremely lucky. And I'm so, so grateful. But now I just like, it hurts me that not everybody gets that, like so much energy into these projects. And then you see them and you're like, no, but it looks beautiful. And you obviously put so much time into it. Like, I just really want you to succeed. So yeah, no, we were very lucky.
You mentioned, being surprised by it, but obviously you put lots of work in. So ideally, you would do very well for that kind of effort you put in. So were you really surprised, or was it kind of aligned with what you were thinking? Or
yeah, we were super surprised. So I mean, we like, not only were we not board game designers, but we were not in the board game community at all. As of 4 or 5 years ago, we were trying to figure out how do people even do something like this. Like, we didn't even know. It's not like we'd never backed a Kickstarter, like a board game Kickstarter. We didn't even know that existed. Had met some folks who had done something like that, and that was our first time hearing about it, that they funded a board game on Kickstarter. And we're like, oh, weird, like Kickstarter for board game, okay. Which of course now seems like ridiculous to not know that. But 5 years ago, we'd spent years thinking that we were just going to make the game and then press the launch button and hope that it did well. And then thank goodness some folks got to us in time and said like, no, like lots of marketing, lots and lots and lots of marketing ahead of the launch, because you can't just click go and be on Kickstarter. And so we took about a year to do all of that. But I mean, we had no idea. We talked to people because we know other people who've done the same as we have and didn't make their funding goals, who spent just as much time, just as much money, went to just as many conventions, all that stuff, and never made it. And so we were talking to people like days before our launch, and we said, okay, here's what we've got for our mailing list. Here's what we've got, in social media support. Here are the people that we know that they're definitely going to pledge on day one. People were like, I don't know, maybe you'll do okay. And we're like, gosh, after all of this time and energy, I feel like we've got to at least fund. Like, it's got to be, and I was thinking like, I think we'll make it to like 8,700. And Adrian was like, I don't know. I feel like it's still possible that we'll put this out there and it'll be like 200 people. And then we'll hit like 250 by the end of the last day. And we'll be like, oh, well, that was our big shot. We really, really did not think it was going to be what it was. It was a complete, like, and I know it's funny because like in retrospect, now that we know, and also like people who were watching it from the outside were like, wow, like you guys really did your homework. And I'm like, I don't know what that was. No more so than anybody else does, I think.
With all this experience and with the hindsight knowledge of what, maybe worked better than other things, are there any specific things that you think maybe contributed more heavily towards your success than other things? This
is an unhelpful bit of advice, but I would say probably the most helpful thing was that there aren't 2-player hidden traitor games. So there's a whole demographic of people who love hidden traitor. And we came out with a 2 to 3 player version that we were going to release on print and play, like right after the campaign ended, right in the middle of a pandemic, where and we did not make this pandemic, so that wasn't planned, but it just so happened that people couldn't gather in large groups. And so I think it sort of struck at the right time. We were supposed to launch on March 31st. which in the US was like week 2 of like the real pandemic, when people like finally things were shutting down and people were like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I'm going to go out of business. And we're like, we can't launch this right now. Like this is a terrible, terrible time to launch a Kickstarter and ask people for financial support. And so we played, and we still were unsure about, we decided to do it in July, like end of June going into July. And we were still like, I don't know, this might be the worst possible time. And it turned out that, you know, people were really hungry for 2 to 3 player things because they were stuck at home. And so if they're going to play something, you know, they can at least print and play this and still get that like sort of social deduction hidden traitor fix. So I think that was a factor for sure, and the uniqueness in the market. But then I would say, I mean, the other great things that sort of came our way, we applied to a few different like game design and indie board game competitions. So like PAX South does a indie tabletop game thing, and we won a spot, sort of selected and featured with them. And we applied to Indiecade, which is an international gaming festival. We won a spot there. And so there were a lot of things where, I mean, for first-time developers, we felt like the big thing was build credibility, because people need to trust us. They're going to give us money and they have no idea who we are. And so good reviews that prove that we made a game and that it's actually okay. And then we also have something that shows that we're real people in the world, you know, like, are there videos, like, so I made a whole video thing on, you know, how to play so that people could see my face and see that I was a real person and not like scam artist or anything. Having the laurels up from the things that we had won or been selected for was really helpful. So all of that was just building credibility. Adrian is a perfectionist in the best possible way. And so his attention to detail was a big deal. We spent a lot of time actually, you know, trying to foster our community. So every single backer, I individually messaged every single one. Anybody who backed our game, and that was like 6,600 people. So I'd spend like an hour and a half at the end of the night and go like, okay, this is Mike. So hi, Mike. Thank you for, you know, like, okay, this is Laurel. Hi, Laurel. Thank you for individual messages to every single person, responded to every comment, responded to every message as soon as we saw it, got a Facebook community. It was all about, I mean, like, ways of building trust, ways of building credibility, ways of building a community. And all that sort of like blended very nicely together in the end.
Yeah, it definitely. I mean, in hindsight, of course it did. But even just hearing that without knowing the results, it sounds like, yeah, how could that kind of game not work out well? So it sounds like you did everything right. Whether or not the pandemic, I mean, of course, the pandemic wasn't planned for, but whether or not that really was the key or not, I think just you had the uniqueness to begin with. You had the, you know, that kind of niche interest group anyways to begin with. So whether or not there was a pandemic, I'm sure it wouldn't have changed things too much anyways. So.
So I know these guys. Steel Istanbul is releasing this amazing 8+ player hidden traitor game called Feed the Kraken, coming up in, I think, this month, actually in October. And they were supposed to launch around the same time as us, and they were like, nope, like, I'm not going to market an 8+ player game right now. Yeah. We could have gone any number of ways for our game, and I know people who had like plague themed games where they were like, not the moment for this, you know, like completely reskin, like the game for science that came out, and I don't remember what it was originally called. It was originally a plague themed game that, like, just at the moment of COVID, they were like, we gotta get some new art and new name, you know. So yeah, there's definitely things where it kind of turned people's lives upside down. We got very lucky in that respect.
You know, you mentioned the things that you thought, you know, maybe contributed more heavily to your success. I was wondering if there's anything that maybe you spent a lot of time on that maybe didn't really help out, or, you know, going back, you maybe wouldn't do it again or spend as much time on it again.
That's a good question. There are definitely things like that. Okay, so one of them is that, you know, people are like, oh, you really got to get comfortable with all forms of social media and stuff like that. One that was really hard for me because it's so different was Reddit. Is a community that's really, they're like, you know, detectives for genuineness. Like if you were on there thinking anything self-serving, that you're going to put anything out there just to get attention, or you're going to like plug your own stuff, they will rip you down. And so I was coming off of, like, I was doing all the social media for Instagram, which is basically 100% self-serving promotion. And then going over, and I tried for months to just trying to figure out, like, what is the community of Reddit? How do I feel like I'm like a real contributor in this community? I'm helping other people as much as they're helping me. There were probably the best thing that we did on there was actually just post the free online version of our game and just say like, hey, it's a pandemic. Here's a 2 to 3 player hidden traitor game online for free if you want to play it. And that was, I felt like I at least put something out there for people, even though it was self-serving. It was sort of like, you know, I don't want people to, you know, here you can play with people from far away and, you know, and yeah, sure, we're launching this soon, but obviously I'm giving it away right now. So, but that one did not, I think it's just not a great marketing tool. It really, which is great actually, because it means that if you're on Reddit, you're probably absorbing real, genuine world information rather than just a bunch of people trying to show off the best of themselves. I would say most of our social media stuff was pretty good. Facebook ads were a big help. Instagram was a big help. We sent a lot of games out to reviewers, and for the most part, that was really, really successful. We went with basically any reviewer that we could find. Went on Instagram, person has like 1,000 followers and reviews games, sure, send them a copy, you know. And so we kept probably something like 13 copies circulating around the world for about 8 months, and just going from reviewer to reviewer to reviewer. Some people never passed them along. Some people never ended up writing a review. I mean, it was okay. We played the odds, and it turned out that we got some really great, cool reviews from it. And we ended up building sort of these like pockets of communities all over. So some of these people who ended up reviewing, by the end of it, sort of felt like friends, you know, like I'd like seen them around on the online communities and stuff like that. And then, and now like, now that they've reviewed a game and we've posted their video somewhere, it's like, oh, I have this like cool contact, and he's got a whole community of people that he talks to. And it sort of felt like our world just kind of gradually kept getting bigger, which is really nice for people who didn't have any connections to the gaming community before. I mean, I think most of the stuff that we did was good. I would say we spent probably way more time than we needed to trying to suss out manufacturing quotes and get a sense of who was the right person to go with. But I don't know that we could have done very much different on that front. It's more that you just don't know what you know until you know it. So we talked to like 10 different manufacturers, and just to get an idea of who was going to contact, you know, who was going to give us good pricing, who was going to have good communication with us, who was going to understand what we were going for and have the skills and the tools to be able to do it. Now that we understand those things, it feels like we'd be able to do a lot faster next time, but that took a lot of time. It was a big drain. The last thing that I would say was a big pain and probably necessary, understanding international tax law was something that I, you know, when you're shipping into other countries, you have to get a sense for how, like, all of the backers immediately were like, this is going to be customs free and VAT free, right? And I was like, sure. Yeah. And so then we really hustled to get in contact with all of our fulfillment companies and make sure that, you know, that's what we were going to do. We promised to ourselves, if anybody paid anything in the way of customs, we would just refund them instantly. No questions asked. There were a lot of things where we felt underprepared because we did so well. And there were a lot of things where our preparation really paid off. There weren't too many places where it felt like we wasted our time, I would say.
That's awesome. I think that, yeah, it's all a process, right? So whether or not you do it 100% right the first time or not, I mean, it's definitely something that you learn and then can take with you for the next time you do things again. With that being said, do you have any plans for part 2 or future games for Mantis Falls, or what's next for you and the game?
Yeah, Adrian's got a couple games that he's been kind of working around. We actually we have 2 games that we full prototypes for. Actually 3 that we've got full prototypes for, that we've been messing around with the mechanics for years now. And then I've got a couple really dying to work on. I love the thing that I love about Mantis Falls is the highly interactive, very immersive component of it. And I think that emotional resonance is a big deal, and you don't see it very often in board games. So especially with 2 people, betrayal feels like a much bigger deal. But then the flip side of that is that when you actually win cooperatively together, it feels like a genuine achievement, like you trusted each other against the odds. You know, Adrian and I being, partners of now like 6 years, that's a cool thing to get to like experience night over night, play something like that. And so I want other games that sort of have that element to it. And so I've got a couple of ideas based on stories from other people, my life experience in circus. Circus is a lot about trust. So I have an idea for a circus related game that would have that kind of going for it. Actually, our kids really like designing games too. So our son really likes making video games. And then our daughter has been kind of playing around with an idea for a sort of like hidden movement, basically like room escape kind of genre, but tabletop game, a little bit different than the like escape room, like the check games ones. And then they've actually made their whole own prototypes. We made games with them when we were first doing the Mantis Falls stuff. We were like, oh, we can just get games printed in prototype form. Like, let's all just make games. And so the kids made their games and we got them all printed up and everything. And a lot of stuff floating around in the works. We have a prequel to Mantis Falls that we've been working on for about a year. And then we've got some ideas for follow-ups to this to add to the Mantis Falls world. So definitely some stuff in the works.
Yeah, that's awesome. Definitely busy, I'm sure. That's awesome to hear about all of this future stuff. I'm excited for that. If people want to learn more about, Mantis Falls or your future games, where can they do so?
MantisFalls.com will get you information about the game. And if you go to Distant Rabbit Games on Facebook, Twitter, or distantrabbitgames.com, info@distantrabbitgames.com is our email. You can find us on Discord, YouTube, all of those things. If you want to pre-order the game, we're still in pre-order right now on GameFound. It's still at the Kickstarter price. It won't be once we go into retail. GameFound is where it's being sold now, and then once it comes out of pre-order and the games are all shipped over, then we're going to go over to our website, Amazon, retail stores, and all of that.
Yeah, well, thanks again so much, Julie. This was super exciting to learn more about your process, about your games, and all of that. So yeah, thanks so much again for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.